Did you know that in 1986 there was a He-Man and She-Ra Masters of the Universe Power Tour? I know, I saw it. I was there. And our guest today was not only the fight coordinator on the show, but he was also the only actor to ever play the character Ninjor in the whole He-Man universe. So please welcome Gus Park. All right, there he is, Gus Park.
Yes.
Joining us from Arizona, right?
Oh yeah, Arizona, up in the mountains.
So Gus, I want to get right into it. You got to tell me, how does a kid from the Bronx who's doing some acting, but is primarily a martial artist, end up working with He-Man and She-Ra?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't know anything much about He-Man and She-Ra until a good friend of mine named Miguel gave me a piece of clipping from a magazine in New York for acting. It was called Backstage, and so he gave me this clip, and it had it were looking for skaters, bicyclists, and then martial artists. And he says I should try for it, and I said yeah. So I put the piece of paper away, and then one day I was doing laundry, and there it was in my pocket when I was emptying pockets to do laundry. And I said, wow, this is today. I got a few hours to get on the subway and head over there and make this audition. And so I did. I headed out, did the audition. It was an interesting audition because they were trying to put me in a category of a dancer more than a martial artist. And the dancing choreography part wasn't going so well. So I remember looking off to the side as I'm doing the audition, and I saw a push broom. And I said, you don't mind if I can use that push broom for something? And they says, well, no, go ahead. And as long as nobody gets hurt. So I grabbed the push broom and I started doing some martial arts stuff with the push broom and some gymnastics and so on. And they says, okay. And I read some lines and they said, can you come back? And I said, sure. And he says, do you know how to do any other weapons? And I said, oh, I've got a bag of tricks. And they said, can you bring all of them to the second audition? I said, I'll do that. And so we had a second audition a couple of weeks later. And it turned out I ended up getting sick, really sick. I had a fever of 101 and did the second audition. And they were so impressed with the audition, they asked me, have I ever did choreography before? And I said, sure. Yeah, of course I did choreography. Not, nothing of this magnitude, but so I said yes. And they says, okay, we want to hire you to play some characters and do the fight coordinating and so on. I said, yep, sounds good to me.
Yeah, it's funny because I was going to ask you, and obviously we've known each other for a long time. I was thinking, does Gus have any? Has he ever been a fight coordinator before? I mean, I know you've coordinated a few fights in the street, but and in the gym, but but of course the old adage of when you're auditioning is you sure, yeah, I can.
Yeah,
and so so this you get hired pretty fast. So what happens next? Do you go into rehearsals?
Well, there was contracts. Of course, they sent me some contracts and saying, this is what we want to pay you. Is this going to work for you? And can you are you going to be free and available to head to California for rehearsals? And they gave me the certain dates and everything. So I went. I read through the contract. Mind you, I had no. I didn't have a. What do you call it? A what?
A lawyer?
No, not a lawyer. An agent. An agent.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't going through an agent, so I was doing this all on my own and kind of going, blind, going in blind. So I went ahead and I said, yeah, man, let's do this. I don't have a whole lot going on other than doing construction and, doing a lot of small roles or if not extra roles in films. So I said, sure, let's do this. And so there it was. They sent me my ticket and went out to California for rehearsals.
Pretty amazing. It's these things happen so fast. Did you know how long they had in mind for you to do this? Because this was quite some tour.
Well, they put a lot of people, Mary Tyler Moore, we had Jim Henson, we had so many different companies coming together to put the money together for this production. A $1.5 million production at the time was the most expensive production of its kind. And the only thing that people were comparing it to was Ice Capades and
Right.
Disney on Ice and those kind of things. And but this was, you know, a combination of all of these things. They were mixing roller skating. They were going to have skateboarding and bicycling, but they just thought, okay, no, this is not going to work with this kind of production and storyline. So it was in the works for almost a year before the tour.
Right.
That's what I remember hearing.
Well, you know, he obviously He-Man was such an explosion. They couldn't get these toys out fast enough or come up with other things to do with the license. And so, you know, when I was a kid, my parents would take me to Madison Square Garden, and we would see these shows where it would be, you know, Bugs Bunny on ice, or Bugs Bunny meets the Super Friends, and it really made no sense. But here's Bugs Bunny, and here's some superheroes, and if you're a kid, you get the light up thing, and you get some popcorn, and you have a great time. And so the He-Man Masters of the Universe Power Tour was in that vein. Here's the first time you're going to see your favorite characters live. Let's take a look, though, Gus, at we'll bring you back to the good old days, and we'll take a look at a clip from the show. This is a commercial we're going to watch, and let's take a look.
From the far reaches of the universe to Radio City Music Hall, magic and fantasy come to life in the ultimate family adventure. The Masters of the Universe Power Tour. He-Man and She-Ra meet the forces of Skeletor and Hordak. Ninjor prevail. See the exciting jet ski competition. See the spectacular Eternian circus theatrical celebration opening live at Radio City Music Hall February 12th. The Masters of the Universe.
All right. Well, so so that gives you some idea of what this show was about. Because I think, Gus, a lot of people watching, and I know He-Man fans are, it's a massive. They have their own He-Man world, and people loving and collecting it. But there's a lot of people who probably missed this, or weren't the right age, you were too young, and so I think people are learning about what this tour was like. And so the concept, I believe, was that He-Man was going to come down from Eternia to Earth, right?
Yes.
And so this was a big thing, you know, because the idea is how do you get these superhero characters into Earth? And so this show was doing it. And as you were saying a little bit, the show had so many aspects to it. It wasn't just a live show. You had music, you had almost a roller derby, if you will, you know, and then fighting and a message and a circus and, you know, all these things in it. So, Gus, you rehearsed for it. Where does the show open? Where do you do the first show?
I think we were in Utah. What did I think I told you? I was talking to you the other day.
Sioux City?
Sioux City, Iowa. That's what it was. And I think that's where we did the opening show. We did the first 3 kind of rehearsal shows to see if it was all going to come together. And there were a lot of glitches. So we had to change a lot of things up and re-rehearse. And but it all came together in the long run, and it was spectacular. It was, you know, bigger than life. A fantastic message. The message throughout the show. That's why I thought the script, the writing, which I still have, the script, the writing for the script was well done, because, you know, later on when I was preparing myself for this tour, I had to sit down and actually watch the cartoon and the He-Man cartoon to find out what am I getting into. I wasn't too sure. And so they always had a little message at the end, and you know, whether it was Orko on one side, and with She-Ra it was, you know, another little character that would show up at the end and tell them, you know, just what the moral of the story was. Well, this particular tour really had its basis on you can do anything you want to do. You can have the power to change lives, to change decisions, to make better choices. And so that was the key for me that said, I'm involved in something big. This is, you know, just not putting on a show and jumping around and getting tickets, making money, but that we're sending a message out. And despite some of the towns having protests, thinking that we're teaching about violence and fighting and whatever. Strangely enough, when they protested, we had larger crowds coming to see the show because of that. And then when people would come in and they would discuss the morality of the show and what really is taking place, overcoming evil and doing good, and you have the power to do and be what you want to be. That was the main message. And even for those who might have gone to my YouTube site and seen the video, kind of rough cut, I'm still working on a really good copy of a combination of all.
Well, let's mention that, Gus. For those who didn't get to see it or those who wanted to relive it, you pretty much were the only person who kept a video diary of the shows. You told me you would have the tour bus driver set up, your big camcorder at the time and a VCR. It wasn't like a phone, and you would get some recordings of the shows. And so you were one of the only people. So pretty much the only surviving footage, you can go on YouTube and you can see the footage that Gus has, and he did piece this together as best as possible so that you can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about.
Yeah, anybody who knows me, like yourself, we've known each other for forever. Even
we're both 21 now.
Yeah.
We go way back.
We go way back. Before the tour, we would play around with the videos and do all that kind of stuff. And I was one to treasure those things. I kept videos and photos. I think one of the reasons why I'm so into keeping photos and memories is I've been involved as a child in fires, and we've lost everything in a fire, photos, you name it, everything was gone. And so after that, I treasure pictures and video and time with people and experiences. And so I hold on to that. And for those people at times who want to reflect, I go into my archives and go into my videos and share with those people, hey, remember this? I've taught in my martial arts and my philosophy, one of the most important things in the martial arts and in life is memory. As we know, with Alzheimer's being so prominent in these days, once you lose memory, you lose everything. And memory is such an essential part of life. Bad, good, whatever, we learn from all things. Life is a never-ending learning process. So keeping these memories alive and sharing them with people, it's nice to hear those people who went and seen the show live with their own eyes at the age of 6 or 7 years old and remember it. Yeah. That's the amazing thing. They remember, wow, I remember this, I remember that. And I go, really, at the age of 6? He goes, oh, it was a great show and this and that. And they give me details of the show that they remember. And they're so excited that I was able to save these videos and put them on YouTube. And of course, they want more, but with time, there'll be more.
Well, we'll get into that a little bit more. We'll talk about the videos and some of the revisiting. But first of all, the character Ninjor was basically unknown. And so you're playing a character, everybody knew Skeletor and Man-at-Arms, but you're playing a character that's brand new to the He-Man universe. I know he was in the comic strips, but he was never on the cartoon. So tell me a little bit about that process.
Well, I tell you what, it's when you got a hold of me and shared that information with me, I never gave it much thought until you brought that to my attention. And I thought, wow, yeah, I never thought about that. It was never on any of the films, none of the cartoons. In fact, it wasn't even in the movie Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren. It was when you brought it to my attention, it put a lot of thought. I put a lot of thought to it. And I'm going, wow, you know what? That's really true and pretty amazing. And, the only way that would ever change is if they did something as crazy as putting another tour together, a He-Man tour, and bringing back these characters.
Well, there's a possibility that, because there is a new He-Man movie and there's a new television series, I believe, Kevin Smith. And so there's always the possibility that they incorporate Ninjor. I don't think they have so far. At the time, Gus, as you know, ninjas were the craze. Yeah. And so everyone had to have ninjas. Kids love ninjas. So I'm sure the people behind Masters of the Universe go, well, every character's got to have the OR on the end, just make a ninja and put the OR on it. And so but as I was saying in the introduction, you are the only actor to ever play this character in any fashion. There's never been a voice actor. There's never been anyone to put it on. And there, as we were saying, there's a hardcore group of He-Man fans who really love this character. So what's it like when you first get the costume, and how that'll happen?
You know, it was because it was so much of it was new to me. It was very exciting. You were kind of on a natural high, floating and watching, because I mean, we were in the process of the costumes being made.
Mm-hmm.
So we show up, measurements are being taken. You know, they're buying shoe sizes, and then you're also playing more than one character. So you're fitting for multiple characters, and they're making it so that you can get in and out of one costume and into the next costume.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be able to make these multiple changes quick. I mean, so I played 5 different characters on the show, and I understudied the Skeletors, and I was ready to understudy Hordak if possible, and if they needed me to do that. Mm-hmm. So fortunately, Hordak never missed I never missed a show. He was there for every show, but I had to understudy and go in and replace some of the Skeletors. There's a scene with 3 Skeletors, and I had to take over several times for a Skeletor. You know, actors who understudied actors had to switch roles real quick, mm-hmm. and that was really a challenge. But it was good to challenge your mind. But it was exciting, you know, getting into this muscle suit. It was such it was very light in the beginning, and it was huge. I mean, the muscles were exaggerated, you know, a lot like the doll or the figure, and it was a lot like that. So you know, not all of us were built like Jack, who played He-Man. Mm-hmm. He was huge. He was a monster bodybuilder, and so we had to use fake muscles. And it was funny at first, you know. It was like, oh, we felt silly putting on these fake muscles, but after a while, and the kids look at you and they said, Ninjor, and you go, what? You know, and you're being called this character. And I'll share a story when you're ready about that. But nevertheless, they affiliated with this character, and I was so curious to know, how did they know about Ninjor? Because he's not in the cartoons, and these kids did, and they were cheering me on. They cheer on Evil Lyn and Hordak and Skeletor. So you had the group that, you know, were happy with the bad guys, and you had the others that wanted He-Man and She-Ra and so on.
Yeah, no, it's so, you know, and we were talking about it, me and you, you and I. The show was, even though it's $1 million show, and you have Mary Tyler Moore investing and all these things, it was still slightly low budget. You were telling me there was one of each costume. Nothing could happen to that costume, or you would be in trouble. And you were telling me about Beastman's costume.
Yeah, Beastman's mask, his headpiece, big rubber, pretty heavy and solid, but it looked very accurate to the cartoon. And you know, he has to do costume changes too. So he was backstage, took the head off, put it off on the table where we keep it. Somebody got backstage and stole the headpiece, and we didn't have another one on hand. That was it. That was made. That was the only one. And so we had to change up, and he had to start putting makeup on, wearing makeup, and you know, fake hair. And he'd have to show up earlier to, you know, prep and get makeup done for him. Where a lot of us, we didn't have to worry about that. And we had the same incident happen with She-Ra. She-Ra has a chest plate. It was a plastic chest plate, and she would put that on, and then she'd do, and she had to fight and everything with this chest plate. Well, someone stole the chest plate. And so for me, what was stolen was on stage, I had some fans, martial art fans, made of aluminum alloy and material, and I have this little fight scene, and I pull out this fan, and you know, it makes a little noise, and after I'm done, I toss it off to the side in this little corner. Mm-hmm. A little kid ran up on stage and grabbed it, took off with it, and we never saw it again. So I had to get another one, but that was minor compared to that headpiece from Beastman. That was a beautiful headpiece, and in fact, on the program, you see the headpiece and what it looks like.
I can imagine how angry Skeletor was that bumbling Beastman lost his head again. um, but so, yeah. So this is you take it to, you do the kind of dry run, and then you're going to bring this show to Radio City Music Hall, which is one of the most legendary venues in all of New York. You're a New Yorker yourself.
Right.
And it turns out that this show is constantly sold out. Most days you're doing 2 shows a day, but it's sold out so many times they've got you doing 3 a day. And this is a really physically active show for you.
Yeah, it was. It got dangerous, and there were some injuries at some of the rehearsals, and also Jack, who played He-Man and She-Ra as well, he's constantly on the go. I mean, he doesn't get many breaks. And his, being the choreographer, I had no idea that we were going to be doing 3 shows at a time, so I would have changed the choreography and lightened it up a little bit. But he had all these fighting sequences, and he had to do everything in his power to keep his size, because he was burning so many calories, just constantly running, sweating, exhausted, shortness of breath. And you see him backstage, and he's just gasping for air. But when he's on that stage, you could never tell. I mean, he hit it real well. And then,
well, they said he lost a couple cups of water every show.
Yeah, it was that serious. It was that. I mean, there were times he was dizzy. I mean, he just like he was going to faint.
And those swords were heavy, right, Gus?
Well, the main sword he comes out with is like solid metal or almost like solid lead, but the others, the aluminum alloy, those were pretty light. They were really light. The only thing that was bad is when you connected, they would chip, and at times you had little chips of aluminum alloy flying in your face and bouncing off. So we had no eye shield protection from them, so that was kind of dangerous. But they made good clinging noises, and they were really light. Aluminum alloy is not that heavy. But after 3 shows, it starts to get heavy, and it gets very unsafe. My swords were I used real swords. The aluminum ones I used as Ninjor. The heat of my hands and spinning them around so fast, they started bending. They would melt and bend. So I said, okay, I'm going to bring my real steel ones. And they says, no, we can't allow it. Somebody can get hurt. And I said, well, these others are going to get hurt because they're going to break off the handle and go flying. So I was using my real martial art broadswords. And it's funny because there's a character called Rockon. Mm-hmm. And Rockon has a wooden handle and a big club on the end. And we do this fight sequence, and I hit the handle, and he holds it up. And one day my sword went right through the handle. It was so chopped up from all the hits that I actually went through it. It broke into 2 parts. The good thing is it was an easy fix for the prop master to go in and make a new one in this case. But that's how dangerous it got, and it scared him because I know how to pull a sword, and there's a lot of safety and pulling swords and always swinging off to the side, never at a person, and so on. And it was a lot of fun, but it was dangerous fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess I know we're jumping around a little bit, but I want to talk about when I saw the show at Radio City Music Hall. This scene was one of the ones that stood out to me, and this was the roller race. Set up to me what this is, and then I'll tell you what I was thinking.
This particular scene is that we're the good guys and bad guys are fighting it out on roller skates, doing a skate race. And in this particular thing, we're building a wall to block anybody from getting past us, to keep the bad guys in front and keep the good guys behind us. So we linked up arms, and we're trying to keep them back. And then eventually they slingshot me to get ahead for the race, and I start racing ahead. You got Real Blast, and you had Beastman. With his original headpiece. Yeah. And so they grab me and they fling me, forward to win the race, which of course I don't win. But anyway, yeah, that's what's happening here.
You have to say spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
There's kids discovering He-Man every day, and even though it's been 30-something years, you just ruined the story for them. They won't be able to sleep tonight. But so my thoughts, Gus, as a friend and a student of yours, is who knew Gus could roller skate? That's one. And were you able to roller skate before this?
I knew how to roller skate only one way, and that was just, in the roller rinks, going in a circle and holding on to the sides of the rails as much as possible.
You were probably going to Skate Key in the Bronx with J-Lo back in the...
That's exactly right. Skate Key. That's where I went. I went to Skate Key. By the way, I played handball with J-Lo when she was just 15 or 14 years old in Echo Park. Echo Park in the Bronx. She was just a little girl, and we all protected her because she had how do I put it nicely, a noticeable rear end anyway.
Even then,
way back and then, she was a little girl, and we made sure those guys respected her. And anytime somebody would say something nasty, we would chase them out off the court. And so she'd play handball for a little while, and then she'd take off, and we didn't think anything of it. She showed no indication that she was going to be a famous person or a star. But nevertheless, anyway.
Well, yeah, hold on, Gus, from what I hear, she's still Jenny from the block. So.
Yeah, not my block. I tell you that.
I move. I'm looking. I've been looking for that every time I get a new place. I keep looking for that block.
Yeah, no, she's not the lady from the projects anymore. But anyway, the roller skating, we would go to the rink, and that was the best I could do. So they actually had professional skaters that were hired as actors on the show. Some of the actors you see, Beastman was a skater, not an actor. Blast Attack, Clamp Champ, Rock-On. These were skaters who were hired for their skating, not their acting.
Right.
And so they eventually had to work with the directors and the different people, to the coaches and so on, to help them with their acting and what have you.
And they help you with your skating then, right?
Well, that's what they did. They had somebody there who was a professional skater. They rented the rink, and we never heard the version of "Walk Like an Egyptian" as many times because that's the only song they played over and over and over. I tell you what, by the time we left, we were walking like Egyptians, and it was just maddening. But that's the only song they played. They wanted us to find a rhythm. And so by the time I was done, I had a lot of injuries, blisters on my feet from the skating and so on. And they took care of it. And by the time I was done, I was doing full turns, back handsprings, diving rolls. So there's a part in the show, spoiler alert, kids, turn off your TV. But you do a diving roll off this ramp. And I'm watching with my mother, who also knows you, and we both looked at each other and said, "Who knew Gus could roller skate and do flips in the air?" He was painting the house a month ago. And so I got to tell you, Gus, I mean, it's impressive by any standards, but it's so amazing that you kind of talked your way into something, and you have a charming personality for that, and your martial arts speak for themselves. But it's pretty amazing that you're this guy who suddenly is the fight coordinator, and now you're roller skating and doing somersaults in a major production. Oh yeah, it's. I'll share this with you. Radio City. I hate to show you the downside, but there's 2 parts or 3 parts to the downside of what happened at Radio City. Radio City Music Hall, we had a shortened stage quite a bit. The roller rink that we skate around was shortened considerably, and that's where we had some injuries because we weren't prepared for this. The rehearsals, that's where some of the injuries took place, was at the rehearsals. And but anyway, there was one of the things they decided on, which wasn't part of the original show, and that's diving off the stage into the audience. Now they pushed seats back a couple of rows. So this way, there was no possibility of somebody going off stage and hurting somebody. But they put these pads down at the bottom of the stage. I go off the stage onto these pads. These are not crash mats. These are gymnastic mats, those little skinny mats. Right. And I do this dive and roll, and I land on my back on this thing. Well, one day I had a little too much speed, and I went way out, hit and landed on the tail of my spine. And I tell you what, I was in tremendous pain. And there was a buddy of mine who was a stunt coordinator. He went to the show, saw this pad, and says, "What are you doing?" He says, you know, you may be the fight coordinator, but you're not the stunt coordinator. I said, no, I know I'm not, but this is what they came up with at the last minute. And this is all they had. He says, don't ever do it again without a crash mat. And so I had a talk with everybody and, you know, the producers and so on. And well, actually the stage director. And I said, listen, I need a crash mat or I'm not going off the stage anymore. I'm injured. I'm hurting bad. And I have to continue doing these shows. And we're booked like crazy for these 10 days. And so they went ahead and put extra mats for me, and that helped. There was another incident where a wheel came off. I do this little fall on stage, and then I get back up, and I have to continue skating. I'm skating on 3 wheels, on one leg, on one foot, and then the other one, because the skate just rolled off the stage right into the audience. So some kid, you know, got a free wheel from the show. So these skates weren't made for this kind of stunts, you know, these stunts. But so we had a lot of skate breaks and so on. But the interesting thing is my mother, I got tickets for my mother, and she came to see the show. And I come out and they introduce Ninjor, and I come out and I do this weapon spinning, and then I jump in the air and do this kick and land back on the skates. Well, it didn't go well that day. I jump up in the air, and when I go to land on the skates, I land on the wheels and I fall straight on my back. And the crowd roars. You hear the laugh. And my mother said she was tearing. She goes, oh, he does that so good. And I'm like, you know, we got home and I said, Mom, what did you think of the show? Oh, that was great. I said, you know, that part I came out, I wasn't supposed to fall. She goes, you did a good job, though. And I said, no, I'm not supposed to fall. I want you to come back tomorrow and see the next show. She goes, okay, I got more tickets. She came to the next show. I come out, Ninjor, jump and throw my kick, and I fall again.
Oh, man.
So we get home, and I go to my mom, and I said, hey, what do you think? And she goes, wow, you keep doing that fall. We're so good. I go, it's not supposed to.
She thought you were Jerry Lewis, yeah.
Oh, my.
Just
So that was the bad, you know, the 2, you know, shows that I really wanted to impress my mother.
She probably told you, Gus, I understand, but I'm not coming back for a 3rd show.
No more.
I'm a grown woman, and I'm not sitting through you anymore. But so we should say that this show at Radio City Music Hall all sold out, the entire run. And then I believe the show grossed, was the 2nd best grossing show there, I think behind Billy Joel, if that's right.
I think that's what the newspaper, I read a newspaper that said something like that.
I mean, so this was a big thing, and Radio City Music Hall is a legendary place. But so a lot of people know the tour from playing Radio City, especially if you're a New Yorker like us. But you then took this thing on the road for 300 shows. Is that right?
Over 300 shows we did total. Over 300 shows from what I remember the record being, and that's kind of when we were really getting really tired. When we got to Canada, we were exhausted. We did 32 cities, I think, if I remember right. Maybe 32 cities, something like that. And some of the cities weren't even planned. You know, they canceled one city, we went to another, or we rescheduled because of snow or storms or whatever the case may be. But you know, it was like one long day.
It all seemed but you were playing these giant arenas. So in San Francisco, you're at the Cow Palace. Here in Las Vegas, you're at the Thomas and Mack Center. Where did you do in Los Angeles?
Los Angeles Sports Arena.
Yeah, these are legendary places. And you know, now Radio City Music Hall maybe fits 6,000. It's a legendary spot, but it's not an arena. Now you're playing places between 16 and 20,000. And you have this giant, you know, we should mention this giant Castle Greyskull that's behind you on the stage. This is a huge thing. As for its time, especially to have a live stage show like this, it was you guys and Iron Maiden probably.
Now, were you there when the Castle Greyskull caught fire at Radio City?
I remember, but I think it was like a show or two after I was there.
After you were there, because the original Greyskull. We had a guy on pyrotechnics. You know, he was doing the pyro work, and the pyros, the sparks, the fire shot up, and it shot so high and hard that it hit Greyskull, the teeth on Greyskull, and it caught fire. And we're on stage acting and looking at this fire, and all you hear is, you know, guys turning it off with these fire extinguishers, and we're trying to stay calm and cool, and people think it's part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
They go, wow, those are special effects. Those are great. Castle Greyskull is on fire. Well, it was bad. It was badly burnt, and they couldn't repair it right away. They did what they could, and right away, we did have a backup, and the backup, sadly enough, I'd have to say, is what's on the video that you see that I recorded, because I wasn't allowed to record at Radio City Music Hall. They didn't allow cameras in, and they didn't. I took a camera backstage and took pictures. That's all I was allowed to do. They didn't like that either. But nevertheless, we had to change the Castle Greyskull to this cheap version that we were all displeased with. We thought it was just a shame. It was a mock of what they should have done, and they never went back to kind of make anything close to the original. So we had to stay with what we had, and we endured with what we had. We made the best of it. But that was it was a sad day at Radio City that we burned the
you
castle.
burned the castle to the ground. Yeah. The tour won that day. But, so you guys, we were talking about it. You guys weren't touring like a rock band in a bus that had bunks. You guys were on a bus, like like get on the bus with seats. And you were telling me it was the Annie tour bus, right?
Right. The retired Annie, the Broadway play Annie tour bus. We managed to get that. We did have another bus. Now that bus was.
We lost Gus. Now the question is, does Gus know how to get back in? Now we could take a break here, but instead we call Gus. And listen, we're learning a lot about He-Man. Oh, there he is. There you are, Gus. All right, good. You know, I don't like to edit these things because that takes brain power much bigger than mine. So I said we're going to wait, and Gus is going to come back, and there you are.
Yeah, we just, technical difficulties. Yeah, we had a second bus. It was black. I have it on video as well, and the backstage guys, the riggers and all these guys, they stayed in that bus, and they did have a bed and beds for them. It was real tight for them as well. It was, so it wasn't easy, and then it's never easy when somebody has to use the bathroom. Oh my! Right. Not on a tour bus. You're allowed to go number one, but leave the number two somewhere else.
Yes.
And when someone did, we had to stop the bus, and all of us had to get out and get some air. But that was rough. That was, and the good thing is that most of the time we flew. They bought us the tickets and we flew. But and at times we would the bus was short rides. But there was one long ride. A handful of us decided we wanted to go on the bus and skip the flight. We had time off, and we would keep the bus driver named Ron company. And so after we did that, nobody wanted to do that again. It was rough. Yeah. It was a rough ride. But
no, I can imagine. But so, because I think when people see a show like this in their city, they kind of assume that it was just made to come to their city. So people in New York go, "Oh, Radio City," not realizing that. And we're talking about the big places, but along the ways, you're stopping in small towns. They have big arenas too. But this is a show that really so many people saw. And that's why I find it so interesting, this many years later that we're talking about it, is that there were, that many people saw it. If you're selling a show and 10,000 people per show are seeing it, and you have, 300 shows, my math's not great, but I think that's like 4 billion people that saw the He-Man She-Ra Master Universe Power Tour, give or take.
Yeah. And I can tell you, it was sad because a good portion of the arena was closed off because that was our backstage, our changing rooms, these large 30 by 30 screens on both sides of the show. These huge screens took up a lot of space. So we would have had more seats sold if we didn't have all that, you know, but it was all part of this backstage stuff that took up a lot of the arena. But we rarely ever or didn't fill the arena. I mean, it was packed most of the time. Very few times we had any empty seats. The only incident was the snowstorm I told you about, where, you know, we canceled the show and people still showed up. If you want me to share that, I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What took place was I can't remember what city it was, but I know we got hit with a blizzard. And the only thing that was fortunate for us, the actors, is we were within walking distance. The hotel was within walking distance of the arena. So, you know, a lot of us they made a path for us. We walked to the arena. We sat around and discussing what's going to take place. And we said, well, everything is canceled. The snow is, you know, 3-4 feet out there. Nobody's going to show up. And so we canceled it, put it on the air. Well, about 30 or so people showed up and they wanted a show. And we told them, listen, you need to go home. This storm is not slowing down and it's unsafe. And they said, no, we're not going anywhere. We're staying here. We paid for this show. We come to see a show. So we gathered up backstage, all of us, and we had a big huddle. And we said, do we want to do this for these people? Let's do it. And in the huddle, we decided we were going to put on the best show ever. But we wanted some liberties. We wanted some freedom. So we wanted to be able to do the skate race at full speed, add a couple of extra turns. So we're going at full speed. And we're going to make these people cheer. We're gonna you know, give them the best show ever. We put more into the fight choreography, more into the dance. We gave them a rock show, which was mostly, you know, before that was a little more conservative.
Right.
And then so the people were scattered all over, sitting all over the arena up in high seats. We asked them all to come down and sit up front and watch the show from up front, and they were excited. They all came. They sat down in front. We gave them the best show ever. I wish I had that one on video because it was so fantastic. And they were very happy, and we made sure those people got to their houses safe. If not, they were, I guess they were going to give them accommodations at the hotel, and they can stay there until roads are clear and so on. So we did everything we could to accommodate those people.
Yeah, I mean, how cool is that? And somewhere, somebody who was at that infamous Blizzard show, you know, is probably on YouTube right now, saying, you know, there's Ninjor. So it's pretty amazing. You know, one of the things we should say about the show was that the voices of He-Man and Skeletor were the actual voices of the actors from the cartoon, the people who made it famous, so that the actors on stage didn't have to act as well. And now I know some did. Man-at-Arms did, and Songster, some of these other characters. And Songster was a character that was created also just for the Power Tour. He was now that character has never done anything else. You know, it was, and it was a little silly in my opinion. But what do I know? I'm standing behind a wall of 10,000 toys. You know, So when you were seeing the show as a kid, to hear the actual voices of He-Man and Skeletor coming out of these characters really made it exciting. And you were saying that occasionally you would do the, you know, for radio and things, you would do an impression of those voices. And
after hearing that, I didn't mean to interrupt, but after hearing it so many times on stage, you know, we were all doing it. I mean, everybody was doing, you know, He-Man and Skeletor and kind of doing our own spoofs of He-Man and Skeletor. And, you know, and so we were taken in full costume to do a radio show. But, you know, they provided the limos. We got there, and Jack, who played He-Man, he couldn't impersonate the voice, but many people thought he sounded a lot like him in his regular voice. Mm-hmm. And then Skeletor, he was okay. He did pretty good at it, and he probably could have done some interviews with it. But most of the time, it was just being quiet in a suit. Same thing with Ninjor. Ninjor never spoke. And so an interview with Ninjor would have been really boring. But so I was put on the spot. They said, Gus, you know, everybody says you're pretty good at doing this. Why don't you do it for us? So the radio announcer, the DJ, So he would interview me, and I would do both voices, you know. And I did the He-Man, and then I would come back as Skeletor, you know, calling He-Man something. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, and you did it well. Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah. You should do a little skeleton. You should do a little Skeletor for us, Gus.
Oh yeah, you got put me on the spot. He goes, let me see if I can remember. There was a line where, "What's the meaning of this, Skeletor?" And
He-Man, you muscular mass of virtue, I will get you if I have to,
and so on and so on. But anyway,
you get to the laugh.
It's been
He-Man.
yeah, it's been years. I think yesterday I did it first time in I don't know how many years. So it's not something I've done recent, but you know, when it's fresh in your mind, it works a little bit better. So yeah, I got through it. They gave me a script, and I read the script and did, you know, the interview. It was hard to break away from the script though and stay in character. And you know, so but it was a good challenge. It was a lot of fun doing that, and it was just a few times that I had to do that. You know, that was
fun change.
It was. You know, the things we did that people don't know behind the scenes, especially Jack and Leslie, and sometimes Man at Arms. I shared some photos with you when some of the characters met up with them. I think it was the mayor or governor of California at the time, and you know, they took pictures with them and got an award. But the thing that many people don't know is how many hospitals they visit. Jack, Leslie, Man at Arms, and one or two other characters would go to these, you know, St. Jude and some of these hospitals, kids with cancer, suffering, kids, you know, their last days on the planet. And so they had to go and in costume and meet up with these people and these kids would just smiles and cheers and so on, knowing that they're in pain from whatever therapy they were under. And Jack and Leslie, especially Jack and Leslie, they had to do a lot of these. And I, you know, that puts a toll on you. It's really hard to go and give these hugs and toys out and do all of this and then come and get on stage and do the show and not be affected. And so they handled that part of the job, which was, to me, one of the most important part of the jobs was that. They did the interviews on TV. Man at Arms and Songster did some of the interviews on TV, and a lot of the guys did real well on some of those interviews, which I have. Fortunately, I recorded a bunch of them, and then Jack, who played He-Man, he did a bunch of recordings too. He would get them from the studios, and I managed to get some copies from him to watch these interviews. So I have a lot of that too, and Jack has some of that. But that's the part people don't know and see, which will lead me to this particular story I wanted to tell you about. And I remember, you know, we did the show. After we did the show, we did autograph signing after the show. We come back up on stage and we sign autographs. Mind you, we're wearing these suits that stink like death. I mean, we're sweating in these things. We do 3 shows. Sometimes we get back into these suits for the second and third show, and they're still soaked and wet. And they do steam cleaning to try to keep these things clean. But because you can't put them in a washing machine, you can't just throw it in the wash, and they do their best to keep it clean. And the prop masters and all that, and so that's why they would yell at us if we got caught, you know, drinking anything, even soda, whatever, with a suit on, because you know, they want to keep it clean to the best of their ability. But anyway, right after the show, we go on stage and we sign autographs. And myself, I could get out of it if I wanted to at times, because my last character is a soldier. So they didn't want the soldier's autograph. They wanted Ninjor. So I would run backstage and actually get back in that soaked and wet, smelly suit and go out there and sign autographs and posters and what have you. So there was a time, we just got finished doing the autographs. We were done. Went in and showered up, got out of costume, showered up. And they said, "Gus, there's somebody out there. They want Ninjor." I said, "Oh man, I'm sorry." He said, "It's a little kid and a mom." I said, "Man, I can't do it. I can't get back in that costume. If I get back, I'm going to throw up." I said, "I can't do it. I just showered." They says, "Actually, the kid doesn't want to see the costume. he wants to meet the real Ninjor. He wanted to meet me. And I said, really? And he goes, yes. So I go out there, and you know, they're sitting out there in the audience. You know, everybody else is gone. The place is pretty much empty. And I sit down. I introduce myself, shake his hand, and I give him an autograph. And he goes, I have something for you. And he pulls out this little Ninjor clip thing that you clip onto things, you know, on anything it holds onto, you know, cloth or whatever. So he gives me this thing with tears in his eyes. I mean, he's just, I want you to have this. It reminded me of that commercial with, you know, the football commercial about the Pepsi or Coke or whatever it was. And he says, here, Big Joe. And he goes, you know, and he throws the shirt, you know, his T-shirt, his jersey at the kid.
Yeah,
and,
here to the catch. Yeah, Mean Joe Green.
Mean Joe Green. And, you know, so it reminded me of that commercial because, I mean, I was getting choked up. This kid really was wanting to meet this character. And then he wanted to meet me, and then he wanted autographs and so on. And he must have been maybe 5 years old, 6 years old at most. He was really just a tiny kid. And the mom was there. And the mom was very emotional. And I said, okay, what are you guys doing? And, you know, we signed the autographs. I got the toy. And he wasn't ready to leave yet. He wanted more. I said, you hungry? And he goes, yeah. And I asked the mom, you hungry? Let's go get some hot dogs. They, you know, the stands are still open. We can get you some food, whatever you want. And we went up and got something to eat. We ate, shook hands, and the kid went home with the mom. The mom was in tears. I'm not a hugging person, but, you know, we gave hugs, you know, and that stands out, you know, out of so many other shows. How does that stand out? Well, because it happened several other times, but that one stood out most of all because, I mean, I was just exhausted. I had nothing left. And I had to, you know, I go, okay, you know, and it's not in the contract that I have to go back out there. After autographs, we're done. You know, we go home. And so I took it on myself to do that. And it was worth every second of being with that kid. If I could reunite with that kid today.
That's funny you should mention that. Here's little Jim. When the kid told you he had something for you, you were probably hoping he was the little bastard who stole your fan. He's giving it back.
Yeah, here's your fan back. Oh, thank you. Yeah. You know. But no, it was really moving.
When you're traveling as much as you are, and your life becomes a hotel room and an arena or a venue, these little things are what stand out because the cities all seem the same. Right. The freeway looks the same. The insides look the same. So when someone has an emotional connection, it means something. And for you, this was your first time in this limelight on a massive production. And so, you know, these are the memories that are going to stay with you.
Yeah, so far I haven't had anything that compares. And you know, I've done film, I've done some theater. Right now I'm still performing as an entertainer, but I think because it was a first for me, and it was the magnitude and then the bonding relationship that we built together. Now it happens with a lot of plays and a lot of theater. And even film, people, you know, hate the wrap-up party because everybody gets to know each other so well. People get married on the set. People have relationships, breakups, and all this, but they learn so much about themselves. But this particular show, it was strange how differences were put aside, minds were changed, and the bonding and closeness were like a family. I mean, it was like a family. Yeah. And that's different. Other things that I've been involved with, you know, there's the groupies, you know, there's people that just stay within their little groups and so on. But after a while, everybody just
a different kind of groupie than what the rock and roll world. But.
Well, yeah, I'm just, it's more like the cliques. Everybody finds their clique. Yeah, the cliques. They start, you know, hanging out with the people they have something more familiar in common with, and that's okay. It happened too, but we all put that all aside for each other. And there were some difficult times where people had breakdowns. I mean, they had some severe breakdowns, crying, you name it, injuries, and how we came through for one another to support one another through it. You know, we didn't have a therapist or anything like that. It was us helping each other. And so that was really what made this show. We were so hopeful that it would come back together and we would go to Asia with it. We were looking at Japan and parts of Asia. So, but unfortunately, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, no. And, one of the things I want to talk about, Gus, is that when you have a show of this magnitude, a big aspect of it is merchandising. Mary Tyler Moore wanted her money. So you got to, so they have swords and then they're trying to sell toys. You got to get these toys out there. And you can't get them fast enough. So here is, this is the re-release. So you get the Ninjor toy, and they were selling these at performances. And I remember they were selling out very fast. This was a hard one. I think people were more excited in some ways to get a character that they had never seen before. And maybe after the show liked that character and now wanted to own one of these.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't our job to push the merchandise. That took care of itself. They had, the venues and all that, doing all of that. And myself, I was fortunate to be, when we left an arena, if there was anything left over, I would pick up and take it. And I picked up a bunch of posters and the miniature posters and the large posters, and I would keep them. And towards the end of the tour, some of the other actors were saying, "Hey, you have any more of those?" And I would pass it out. In fact, a few years ago when I did the PowerCon.
Well, hold on, Gus. Don't jump ahead too fast.
Okay, no. But anyway, when I had an extra poster I gave Jack and Leslie just a couple of years ago because they didn't have one.
Right.
They didn't have one, and I sold a bunch of them too. But I have about 4 or 5 that I keep for my own sake, and one of them is the poster from Radio City Music Hall.
Right. Well, so one of the things that I think is so interesting, Gus, is that this was a job and it was a part of your life. The tour ends in 1987, and then you go back to life for a while. He-Man is now always going to be some part of your life, but it is what it is. But who would think that 30 years later that this character of Ninjor all of a sudden is making a comeback? And what we're looking at here is the Funko Pop of Ninjor. Now, this was a New York City Comicon exclusive, and this was only sold. Now, the Comicon didn't happen in 2020 because of the pandemic. So the only way you could order this was order this online, and it's quite the collectible. But here they are breaking out Ninjor again. They made all the other He-Man characters. Why not have a rare one? And it happens to be a New York exclusive, which is fitting. And so here this pop figure is. This is a huge world. I mean, you have kids, And so all of a sudden, Ninjor is back into the He-Man universe, if you will. And so you get an invitation to attend a show in which would be the 30th anniversary, I believe.
Right.
And you do what's called the PowerCon. And I'm sure some of the fans watching, they attend and they know. So this is a He-Man convention, and it's all aspects of the He-Man universe. You have the cartoon, and you have the movie with Dolph Lundgren, and then you have and so for this show they had a panel of the original, some of the original Power Tour actors, and so you and He-Man and She-Ra and Skeletor, I believe, right?
Skeletor and Man-at-Arms.
And Men-at-Arms, all back. And what really made the occasion special was that your footage was shown for the first time in 30 years. Your footage is shown on a screen to an audience of people who either were children the first time or had always heard about this thing but never got to see it. And I want to point out that some of that footage, Gus, you have on YouTube, and people can look that up, Masters of the Universe Power Tour, and you can see some of it. And somewhere down the road, you'll put out some of the, you'll put together the best clips of the show. And also, so you also have some backstage footage, because there is a resurgence in this. We all like nostalgia. And especially if you were a child, we're all trying to, retrace our childhood. There's a reason that I'm a grown single man with a wall of toys behind me. There's a reason that He-Man Battle Cat is still in the box. You know what I mean? You date somebody who's got kids, and then you try to explain that their kids can't play with it. They can just look at it, through the box. Did you realize, Gus, that here's a little trivia for the He-Man fans. Did you know that the voice of Ninjor, whatever, is also Skeletor. Did you know that?
I got word of that, and I didn't know it was fact, but I guess it's fact. You're telling me now, and but I got whisper of that in the beginning that the same voice of Skeletor was
Alan Oppenheimer is the actor. And he had an amazing career. He's also the doctor who puts the Bionic Man together and the Bionic Woman. So he's had quite, and he is still alive, and he's also doing his appearances. And I bet you for a guy like that, he's thinking the same thing kind of you are. I did a cartoon voice, and it's huge. You know, the amount of Skeletor merchandise and things that's out there. And so it goes from all aspects. And you were telling me that one of the guys who worked on the tour actually directed the He-Man movie. Is that right?
Right. Well, actually, he was one of the writers and producers of the show, Gary Goddard, and he was the director of the Masters of the Universe movie with Dolph Lundgren. So he was on set, and he wrote. He was co-writer of the show, and Christopher. Let me see. Tony Christopher was the director. Tony Christopher did the Broadway show, and I think the movie Hair.
Wow.
You know, back in the day, and he was really wonderful to work with. He had tremendous patience with us. And then Ford Candlish was the assistant director, who also was at the PowerCon. He was on the panel with us, answering questions. Gary was there too. He was there, but he didn't want to be on the panel. He just he was staying behind the scenes and kind of just being quiet. And
he's a big part of that universe, though, to do both things.
Right. Yeah, and he worked hard to get both of those done and accomplished, especially what he went through with the Masters movie. That was a real chore, coming up with the money and coming up short and changing storylines. And
it was a chore watching it too, Gus, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, he anybody who can get behind the scenes footage and see behind the scenes footage of it, they can see how hard he worked. I mean, he was exhausted, but it was like that with this tour. Getting it ready was very little sleep, and even when we were on tour, it was very little sleep. We get to the hotel, we get a few hours. You know, if you want to see the town, get out and see people and whatever, then you just have to give up the sleep. So a lot of us were going on 2-3 hours of sleep a day, getting up, doing a show, and getting out and about, seeing the town and trying to mingle as much as possible. And I was okay just going back to the hotel and getting my sleep. I looked at the town out the window and go, yeah, that's the town. It's funny. I'll have to share this footage. We were staying at the in Vegas. I'm trying to remember the hotel, the Dunes.
Yeah, wow.
That was a long time ago. Way back when I was really young. I videotaped outside the window of the hotel, inside the hotel and outside the window, and how much.
I had footage of the strip that doesn't look the same.
It doesn't look at all. Oh, what a difference from way back then, and now it's gone. I mean, they tore it down years ago. And
the Thomas Mack is still standing, though. The arena is still there.
Yeah, I was surprised because I thought there was rumor that they were going to go ahead and tear it down and start a new one, and so I'm like, well, that's a shame. You know, I know it's been around for a long time, 30-something years. It might be time to take it down and rebuild.
I believe it's owned by the university. So I believe it's sort of a write-off. So their basketball team plays there. The UNLV Running Rebels play there, and I think they've lost a lot of the concerts and productions though, because Vegas is open. Each place is open their own arena, so they don't have as many concerts there. But they do special events, and they also they do graduation there. So many kids graduate to college, you need an arena to fill it. So hopefully, because that place has had legendary boxing matches and wrestling matches, that would be the Madison Square Garden of Las Vegas,
Yeah, no, I'd love to go back and just see if I can remember anything about it, backstage or anything like that. I don't think they'd let me in, but it would be something I wouldn't mind doing because, again, we were the second performers to show that when they first built that and opened the doors. It was REO Speedwagon, the first group to perform there. We were the second. We were right behind them. We were fortunate to enjoy their concert. They let us in. go backstage, meet with everybody, shake hands, and hang out backstage with them. But we were really fortunate that we were with that kind of prestige. We're right after REO Speedwagon. Can you imagine it? Something totally different, night and day. This band, and then
He-Man.
but and they stuck around to watch the He-Man show. They were there sitting where the sound man was on the keyboard. The sound board is huge, and they were sitting watching our show, and before they had to leave. So that was and I don't know if I ever told you. I may have told you, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead also. There was one arena that we went to, and I knew when you were a kid, you were big on wrestling. The WWF wrestling, you were really big on it.
Yeah.
And we were sharing an arena. They were finishing up. We were coming in, or we were finishing up, and they were coming. Wrestlers of the time.
I was going to ask you about this. Yeah.
Yeah, they were there, and you may know the names better than I do because they had like these teams, Bumblebees, or big names teams. One of them was Rowdy.
Yeah, Rowdy Piper.
Piper.
Didn't you run into him in a steam room or something?
Say again?
Did you run into him at a gym or a steam room?
It was in the same place. The hotel was connected to the arena, and so they had a steam room, a sauna, a steam room, and a pool, and so forth. So I go into the sauna, and he's sitting in there, and and I look at him, and I go, oh yeah, okay, and I close my eyes and rested up. I just wanted to sit in the sauna and relax. So a bunch of kids come in, and they want his autograph, and they're going nuts. And he goes, okay, and he goes, okay, come on here, and he signed the autographs, and the kids left, and I'm still just trying to rest up, and so Rowdy goes, hey, you watch wrestling? And I open my eyes, I go, I guess you're talking to me. I've watched a little bit of wrestling, yeah, sure. He goes, huh? I go, yeah, I know who you are. He goes, oh, okay. I just wasn't sure. What do you do? And I said, I'm at the tour that's coming in right now. He goes, oh, okay. So you're one of the performers. And I said, yeah, I'm one of the performers on the show, and so on. And we started talking for a little bit, and we started talking about his exercise regimen that he was doing. And I watched him go from the sauna to the jacuzzi into the freezing pool, right, and then back into the sauna doing push-ups. And then he'd repeat this over and over again to keep himself in shape and burn, some of the fat and whatnot.
I believe that at the time he was losing weight to do the movie They Live, the John Carpenter movie. And I think that's when you ran into him. I think that's what he was doing. He was trying to down.
That's possible. We didn't discuss that so much. We talked about wrestling. We talked about the show, and he asked about the show, what it was about, and so on. And but then I left. I know most people would say, you left. What? I said, well, I had other things I had to do that day, so I left, and I said, hey, I'll see you later. And he goes, all right. And that's when we went to dinner, and that's where all the other wrestlers are, these massive monsters walking around. And I'm like, Jack would feel really good here because he's a bodybuilder. He's big. He's tall.
You should put on your muscle suit.
Yeah, I could show up in the muscle suit so I could fool them. Look at my muscles.
Ninjor could hit Rowdy Piper with a chair.
So yeah, it was nice, meeting these people, and I didn't know they were going to be there, and there were so many of them there, and eating and talking, and just real normal people. Nobody was putting on any acts or anything like that. It was just, you talk to them in their normal way, without the rough voice or anything like that. So it would have been your heaven at that time, because you would have been right in the middle of it, probably getting autographs and whatnot. And so I didn't think about autographs at the time. I just, I just found it fascinating that I just happened to be there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Gus, it's amazing that, like I said, 30-something, my math isn't so good. Years later, we're still talking about this tour. And again, He-Man is about to be bigger than ever. It really is back. They have these documentaries about the toys. All of the toys have been reissued. And people my age who have kids, luckily I'm not one of them, but the people who do, they're passing this on to none that I know about, but they're passing this on to their kids, and it's one of these great stories, and so we'll see what happens. But I think for sure there's an interest in you doing these power cons, these type of things again, because again, you're the only person to play Ninjor, and I know that people like to have you sign the Ninja memorabilia and things, and so as of now, it's a strange legacy, for you to have, because as I said, you are a martial artist first. You know what I mean, and I should point out, Gus, now that I have you here, I was your favorite student, right?
Of course, of course.
Don't tell those other guys. I did, in honor of martial arts, Gus, I did wear my crane kick T-shirt just for you. Yeah. And I keep trying it, and I get beat up every time. But Gus, I want to have you back sometime, and next time we're going to talk about kung fu movies instead, because
sure.
I mean, I'm so glad we got to talk about the Master Universe Power Tour. But you are an expert not just on martial arts, but on the cinema involved with it too. And so I think we could have a really fun time recommending some of the best martial art movies to people who, people are stuck at home. They're looking for something to watch. And these movies now maybe aren't as great as some of the ones that, that we grew up.
Right. Yeah, no, that we'll make that a plan. We'll do that. It would be nice to reminisce about some of that stuff too. It's funny because even my wife and I were talking about looking at classic Silver Hawks and what's the Lionel, the Thundercats, and so on. And and some of the actors from the He-Man tour went on to do the tour of the Thundercats and the Silver Hawks and so on. It didn't have the popularity that He-Man did live. I think where it lacked a little bit was on the storyline, but but anyway, we look back at it and we think, oh wow, look at how different today's animation and storylines and things were different today compared to way back then, and how she used the term cheesy they were. And I said, well, they're a little cheesy, but they're still. It's good to go back and look at them. I was trying to introduce it to my son. Yeah. Who's pushing, he's going to be 7 pretty soon. And, he's looking at him, he goes, oh, but, I've got him watching Transformers and some of the other classics too. So he's starting to show interest. Unfortunately, not He-Man, but we're working on it. Yeah. And,
well, he'll get there. When the new stuff comes out, I bet you they were late and then they want to look back, so it looks like He-Man's going to live forever,
Well, he's probably going to live a lot longer than I am, but just the thought, if this ever really took off, and imagine if they did put another tour together or a stage show, because these things seem to be fading away, but another stage.
Uh-oh. He was about to announce the big comeback, the He-Man Master Universe Power Tour 2021 comeback, and we lost him. We're going to give him a second and see if he comes back. But while we're waiting, there it is, the Ninjor Funko Pop. And these are sold out right away. There was a store in New York called Toy Tokyo that had these. Okay, there's Gus. I told everybody that you were about to make a major announcement that the Master Universe 2021 Power Tour was back.
Yeah, bombs heading for California. News at 11. No, it's, I said if there was ever a tour, and they were going to put a tour together, I would, and somebody would call me and say, listen, are you interested in doing the choreography? I would be there in a minute to do the fight sequences and choreography for a new show like that with new blood, young people with energy and so on. I would, that would be like hitting a lotto for me. That would be a thrill to be able to be a part of something like that.
Yeah, well, and it could happen. And so I want to thank all the people who are watching this. I always forget, Gus, I'm so bad at this. You're supposed to let people know that they should subscribe. So here it comes now. And I always mention this at the very end when everyone's already fallen asleep. Turn this off, went back to playing with their He-Man toys. But if you've enjoyed this interview, you got to subscribe. We've got a lot of cool content, and I talk a lot about the Funko stuff, and there's gonna be a lot more of that coming. Plus interviews with rock musicians, which is my other career. So if you're enjoying this, please like it down below. You can ask some questions of Gus. I'm sure Gus can get back to you if there's anything you wanted to know, and then also subscribe so that I can continue to do this. And so, I want to say, Gus, one day we go on, not just talk about Kung Fu movies, but we could talk about personal stories, and we could do a whole episode about Roosevelt Island. That's, and these other things. That's a tease. They call that a tease in the business. Gus and I have had some amazing times, and so I should say, Gus, thank you for being a friend for all these years. It's been an honor knowing you all that time, and I'm glad of all the things that we got to accomplish, and your teaching and all these things. Because when I was a kid, Gus was really a powerful figure, in my life, and so many others too. So I thank you for that, Gus. I thank you for sharing the He-Man stories with us, and all the fans who are watching. It's so great that we're able to have these conversations. So if there's anything you want to say, Gus.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual, and I appreciate you doing this with me, and I really enjoy sharing my stories, my life experiences, especially if it can do some good for somebody out there. So it's always a pleasure for me. This is not a burden. To others, it's a burden, or they get paid for it. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm here doing this.
Well, hold on. Let me just tear that check off.
Put that on contract.
Yeah.
No, it's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this, and I'm hoping those people out there that are not only fans of yours, but of the show and of He-Man, and eventually maybe even a fan of mine. No, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy sharing my life and my life stories. I've been told many a time, write a book, write a book, write a book. And every time I get started, I never finish. And so I get 3 or 4 pages in and I don't. But I enjoy sharing my stories. So, anytime you want to do this again on any subject, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, we will for sure, Gus. Okay, thank you. And everyone check out, go on YouTube and relive the tour through Gus's footage. I think you really enjoy it.
Sure, there's a lot there on my website, on the YouTube website, sifugus@yahoo.com.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks, Gus. We'll talk soon.